Artist Margarita is here. She has been largely behind the scenes of her urban pop art project collaborations. Thank you, Margarita, for surfacing for our conversation.
Well, I'm a big fan of yours.
You talk about everyone's individual pursuit of happiness as a responsibility to the self and to humanity. Take me through that thinking.
I think that every person's chosen pursuit of happiness is a human right, and it's a responsibility. It's a responsibility to reach the dopest version of yourself, and also a responsibility to not harm others while on pursuit. So, in my utopia, folks embark on those pursuits because it's a survival instinct. It's a natural order, it's as natural as osmosis. But in reality, a lot of people, too many people, are ruled by fear. And they're afraid because they're being threatened. So if they're being threatened by a regime, then it's up to people with the power on the outside who are not being threatened to stand up. To stand up. If you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything, right? To stand up, to do something to restore the natural order so more of us can do what makes us happy. Whatever that is that they can find on this delicious planet Earth and beyond, that's not harming others.
So that's when politicians step in and demand change.
Well, no. They step in when the artists, activists, and social innovators convince them to.
So what if they aren't threatened by a physical threat like a regime?
That's usually a fear of change, so much so that they don't follow survival instincts to do good by themselves and their people and the universe, making decisions led by fear, so in defense mode, instead of out of love, when you're leaning into life and love. That lessens the probability that you will elevate towards your potential self if you're acting out of fear. So if it's totalitarianism, well, that's bullshit, and that needs to be stopped. And if it's out of insecurity, that's bullshit too. That's a kind of internal totalitarianism, I think.
Your projects help people to produce fresh and consume smart. How would that internal totalitarianism get in the way with those roles?
I do a lot of collaborations in my projects, and what that's about is constantly finding mutual incentives to move forward on a shared vision, right? So, the first step in the creative process and in life is about knowing what you want, what your best case scenario is, so you can move towards it. But a lot of people skip that envisioning step. They don't know what they want. Okay, but here's what happens when people know what they do want going into a collaboration. They see their best case scenario and they go for it. They steer their ship towards it and they make compromises on its behalf. And the more things you get in a compromise, the more sustainable the partnership. That goes for business and pleasure.
And what if everyone did what they wanted?
That's a kind of potential energy like nuclear power. You know, it could cause a whole lot of harm or a whole lot of good. It's up to the people and their collaborative ideas. With great freedom comes great responsibility.
That takes a lot of trust in humanity.
That's true, but it's not about where you start, it's about where you're going. And we need to tap into that intrinsic sense of sameness and connectedness in order to move forward. Artists and designers for social innovation can do that. An artist a few years ago said at a screening of her film, I don't remember her name or the name of the film, something about an old law that sentenced kids as adults, some kind of loophole when they tried kids as adults for serious stuff and they got stuck with life sentences. Actually, a few colleagues of mine in grad school made that law a thing of the past. Anyway, she said that as an artist, empathizing with the individual and letting others experience that humanizing through your work is the only way to change. And I think that's true for social innovation designers too. As an artist and social innovator, I think it's important to remind people that they owe themselves and the greater good that they take part in their own pursuits of happiness. and not be on the sidelines of their own lives and their own happiness.
Now, we haven't seen much of you lately, but your work updates regularly on the internet. On the Urban Pop Art Project's website is written the credo, see the surreal in the real. What is that surreal in the real?
Every day, everything we see and feel goes through us like a coffee filter. And when it comes out, it's got the flavor of our fictions brewed into this thing we call reality. We are the sum of our fictions.
Is there a fictional character who has inspired you?
Yes, Captain Benjamin Franklin Hawkeye Pierce from MASH.
Why?
Because he was a doctor set up in a MASH unit near the front lines of the Korean War, stubbornly loyal to the harm principle in a place terrorized by war, which is the pinnacle of harm. He treated North Korean wounded people just as much as he treated the American ones. You know, citizenship to humanity came before citizenship to a country.
So what will you be working on now? Where can we find you?
That's top secret. But you know, the work will be out there. Trust the art. It's about the art, not the artist.
Thank you, Margarita.